So for my video, I'm doing stereotypes in the search for self-identity. My definition of a stereotype is kind of generalizing a person sort of based on how they act and how they, I don't know, like dress and what they're interested in and stuff.
My definition of a stereotype is a person who's generalized by the way they act or dress, even if it isn't necessarily them.
My definition of a stereotype is it's a mold that people kind of try and fit to make everything easier and so that they don't seem so different and they can't be judged for who they are.
My definition of stereotypes is that it's a generalization of characteristics of a certain group of people based on like appearance or what they do, hobbies and such, and the people they hang out with, sort of. Yeah.
In class, we had a whole bunch of discussions about stereotypes, like different kinds of stereotypical stereotypes, like jocks and nerds and stuff like that, but we also talked about the stereotypes that are generally given to each gender. In class, we watched the film The Breakfast Club. It was mainly focused on stereotypes and kind of finding yourself and how the characters show that they're more than just these stereotypes that they're based on. So in the movie, there are 5 main characters. There's Claire, who is the popular girl. There's Andrew, the jock. There was John, who was kind of the druggie, Brian, the nerd, and there was Allison, who was kind of known as like the freak, and she was the psycho one, I guess. At the beginning of the movie, there are also definitely their stereotypes, so it's just kind of, you're forced to believe that's who they actually are, because that's how they portray themselves towards everyone who they interact with. But when you watch the movie, they shed their stereotypes throughout it, and they kind of show each other who they really are. They're all just kids who are just trying to fit in and trying to find themselves and just trying to make high school life as easy as they can. Well, at least some of them are. And I think that stereotypes kind of tie in to the search for self-identity, because when you're finding yourself, you kind of shed that stereotype. Like once you shed the stereotype, you're just you, and you're not pretending to be anything that you're not. And I think that so many people use stereotypes so that they don't have to show people who they really are, and they don't have to risk being judged for like the true person that they are. Because if they're being judged for the stereotype, it's not going to be as hurtful towards them, because they know that's not their true selves. It's just what they're kind of showing to others to make life easier. I think that the search for self-identity is really just finding yourself and kind of shedding what other people think of you to show them that you are what you are. And I think once you really found yourself, you're not going to be ashamed of who you are, because you will have accepted yourself and kind of realized that you're you, and that's good because everybody's different. So in class, we read a short story called On the Sidewalk Bleeding, and it was about a guy who got stabbed in the alley because he was wearing his gang jacket. And in the story, they kind of talk about how, like, he talks about how he is Andy. He's not this person who's just part of a gang. He's his own person. And it really ties in, like, that story is really about the search for self-identity, because lying on the ground, just knowing that he's about to die, he's not thinking about the gang or others. He's thinking about himself. And I think in those last few minutes you really find out who you are, because your mind isn't clogged with thoughts about other people or what other people think. It's just about you. And I don't think a lot of the time you don't really get to think about who you really are, because you're so worried about being judged by others. And at the end of the story, the cop comes in and he finds Andy. At the end, he just kind of looks and he just says, "Oh, just another guardian." So overall this semester I've learned a lot about stereotypes and search for self-identity, and I know how to define both things, and I know how to identify both, and I know how stereotypes affect people, and